For our second presentation this afternoon, we have Captain Margaret Calloway, MD. She's the Associate Dean for Recruitment and Admissions at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. She's going to present some information on her past and her background and how she came to be where she is today. And she's going to give some great advice on how you can focus on and reflect on your past experiences for the purpose of writing a meaningful and powerful personal statement, as well as preparing for the application process overall. So without further ado, let me introduce Captain Margaret Calloway.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And to those of you that are online, welcome. Today I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I went through to get to where I am today, and to also help you focus on some of the things that you can write on your personal statement and give you some tips as to how you can improve that writing and what you can add to your secondary applications as well. So when I went through high school, I did junior ROTC, and so I learned a lot about the Navy as far as the different ships and the different things that were in the utilized within the Navy. And so that's how I first got my experience within the Navy. I graduated from high school when I was 15 years of age, so I was pretty young. I went on to college and graduated in 3.5 years. And before going on and going directly into medical school, I already knew that that's the field I wanted to go into. I wanted to really get some real life experience and understand what the medical field was all about. So I began working at County USC in Los Angeles as a pulmonary tech, and it was more of a on-the-job training, and I learned more about blood gases and pulmonary function testing and exercise physiology testing. And I did that for several years before going on and also training also for respiratory therapy and learning some of the aspects of that, and became certified and registered in both fields before going on to actually being a director of and supervisor for pulmonary function lab at Martin Luther King Hospital in South Central Los Angeles. While doing that job, after about a couple years of working there, I decided that I wanted to go back to medical school. And this was after working with one of the pulmonary critical care docs he was doing bronchs. Bronchoscopies are where you're looking in the camera and going down and evaluating disease processes within the lung. And as he was doing that, I said, I can be the doc on the other side doing this. And at that point, I made a decision that was what I was going to do. And by that time, I had been out of school for several years. And so, as they talked about earlier on one of the panels, when you have that gap from education, you need to do something to make sure that your application is going to be very much looked at the next time you're going to put an application in. So what I did was I actually quit work and went down to half-time working per diem. And in respiratory therapy and pulmonary function labs, you can do that. And while I was doing that, I prepared for the MCAT. And I prepared 4 months for 4 hours a day, and then worked part-time. And I got 12s and 13s across the board. And so at that point, after I solidified the MCATs, I said, okay, now I need to have current coursework. And so I went back and went to a post-bac program. And after the first semester and I had great grades at the end of that program, I had applied to medical school that year. While I was in the post-bac program, I'd sent my fall grades in, and by early January, I'd gotten my first acceptance in University of Illinois, Chicago. And that followed with Creighton and a couple other schools. And so I made a decision to go to Creighton University. And, these are decisions that me being from Los Angeles and other schools were in larger cities. Creighton was in Omaha, Nebraska. It was someplace that, hadn't been around snow much, and so it was a new adventure for me, but it was an area that allowed you to pretty much concentrate on your studies, and it didn't have too many distractions out there. And so it's part of why I didn't force myself to go to kind of the California or the Illinois schools. And as I went through, and first year I funded my own education with student loans and stuff, and then I said, this is ridiculous. I want to go back in the military. I'll just apply for the scholarship. And by the time I had gotten accepted the first year, I'd already been too late for the first year scholarship. So I took a 3-year scholarship with HPSP with the Navy. It's the Health Profession Scholarship Program. And with that, I went on and completed medical school, and I was I matched in Naval Medical Center San Diego for my residency in internal medicine. It was at a time when everyone would, at the end of first year, would go on to General Medical Officer tour after your internship, but I was one of 4 interns that went straight through in the training, and I finished my residency in internal medicine. At the conclusion of the residency, I went on to be a staff doctor at Great Lakes, in charge of all of the recruit training and all of the retirees in that area. And after 3 years, I applied to fellowship again for infectious disease, and that's where I got involved with doing a lot of cool things with the Navy, including spending some time in Bangkok, Thailand, and Sangkhlaburi, Thailand, doing working with fever studies in malaria, leptospirosis, and dengue fever. And it really showed me that infectious disease was really the right place for me, and tropical medicine was one of the things that I was very much interested in. So at the end of that fellowship, I was actually put in charge of training all of the Army, Air Force, and Navy docs in tropical medicine as my next duty station. And as part of that, what I did was set up some humanitarian missions in different countries and training sites in different countries. Some of the countries that we went to were Bolivia, Peru, Guyana, El Salvador, Brazil. And some of the way the training missions were set up where we would have the doctors train and see how the host nation doctors took care of their patients in their own hospitals locally in the main cities. And then we would go to a rural area where there wasn't a lot of health care, and we would bring between $15,000 and $30,000 worth of medication and supplies to that country and help teach their doctors, their nurses, and preventive health and Ministry of Health how to do some preventive medicine and help cut down on disease in those areas, as well as deworm kids and provide vitamins and stuff for the mothers and new babies and stuff. And what it allowed us to do was to not only allow our doctors to see the diseases that were inflicting people in that country, but it also allowed them, if we had troops coming back, to be able to recognize those diseases early. And as doctors, they would be able to treat our troops early and avoid any end organ or disaster healthcare type problems. So those were some of the types of things that we did in tropical medicine. And at the end of my 4 years of doing that, I actually was assigned directly at Uniformed Services University as the Assistant Dean for Special Programs. And I worked with the Weapons of Mass Destruction courses as the course director, and I also worked with the bioterrorism and homeland security courses, and I worked with students that were academically challenged with standardized exams, helping them get over their anxiety, some of their learning issues that were related to standardized tests. And I was on the admissions committee. I had interviewed with the admissions committee, and at the end of 2 years, I actually was appointed as the interim associate dean for recruitment and admissions by the dean, because he recognized that I was out working with students and helping students get into medical school, and he felt that they needed someone out there to be able to express the types of things that are available at our medical school, and to be able to bring students in and give them that opportunity as well. And so I've been doing that since 2006, and it's been very rewarding to be able to assist students working on their application and preparing for medical school. And we'll continue to do a lot more to help them get there. So I talk about my experiences only to let you know that as you start to write your personal statement, you're starting to write about what got you to medicine. You know, where's your, and as you can see, some of the things that I've done in my past, you can see the passion and how much I enjoy the work that I do, and whether it's in the academic arena and teaching, or whether it's in the clinical side of taking care of patients. And so if you have those exposures to be able to shadow someone, and you can get some of those experiences as you start to go through your preparation to go to medical school. When you're writing your personal statement, and there's a lot of things that you may need to watch out for, and one of those things is to avoid using a lot of terms like I throughout it, because medicine is a partnership. It's about caring for others and working together with other clinical workers and stuff. And so if you're only talking about yourself, sometimes just using the word I all the time, the reader may think that you're very arrogant and you're only looking out for yourself. So it's, you know, you can use the word I every once in a while, but you know, you need to use it in the format of consolidating your information. One of the other things is, you know, a lot of people talk about an injury that they may have had, but then you need to be cautious about doing that, because you're putting your health history out in the public's world. And these applications, you may be applying to 10, 15 schools, but you don't know how many readers are reading that, and you're talking about your health history, and so people are finding out about your medical care and your medical history, and that's sometimes not cool, okay? And so I would avoid using those examples, and you can use it in the second tense of where you've worked with someone that may have had an injury that you've been exposed to, or worked in the emergency room where you've seen things, but I would avoid using my own medical history as something to explain as your introduction to your personal statement, okay? And some of the other things that I think that are very critical are a lot of people like to try and explain their deficiencies in their academics in their personal statement. You know, it's okay if you know, you feel that you really need to have a big explanation about it, but usually that information will come out in the secondary material. And so your personal statement should be about you and you getting to wanting to go into medicine. And so those are some of the things that I think, as a reader of personal statements and as someone that works with students that are doing personal statements, those are key factors that I sometimes think are should be left out, especially for someone that is applying to our school. When someone is applying to our school and they get invited for the interview, we think that once they've met the bar for the interview, grades and MCATs, our interviewers are separate from our admissions committee. Our interviews will not have your grades and MCAT. But if you put information on your secondary material or on your MCAS personal statement about your grades and anything, then those questions are fair game to be asked about, because they will have your activities as well as your personal statement and your secondary essay about why you want to be in military medicine. And so your whole conversation in the interview could be explaining your grades. And that's what we want to get away from. What we want to have is an interview that's going to tell us about you, the person, and how you're going to be as a physician, and if military medicine is right for you. And you're there to ask those questions. Is it right for you, or are we right for you? You know, it works both ways. You need to be evaluating us, and we're evaluating you for that position. And if it's not right, then you need to walk away from it and just withdraw your application. And we invite students to do that, you know, once they come there. Most students that come for an interview at our school, they leave there not wanting to go anywhere else, because that's exactly what we do. Our interviews are set up so that you meet the deans. You also get a number of briefings in the morning, and it's part of our process. You get 2 interviews. It may be by a faculty member, but they're all military doctors or prior doctors, and they're also could be 4th-year medical students, and each interview counts the same weight. So we go from there. So with that, I wanted to give you a brief overview of some of the things that are important in the application and your background and your past, and to also bring up some of the things that are important when you're dealing with having to put in for your criminal background check. All schools are requiring a criminal background check. We're one of the schools that do, and probably the only school that does security clearance. And so it extends beyond just the basic criminal background check. And so your detailed information that you have on your AMCAS application needs to match what you're going to be putting on any future background checks as well. And so, you know, someone tells you that that record's been expunged, but you know that you've had that incident, list it anyway. It's better to be able to explain it and have someone forgive you for it than to not have it there and then have to look them in the eye and say, well, I didn't think it was there, so I was not going to tell you anything about it. And, you know, the number of applicants out there, it's very easy for that school to say, well, you know, you were dishonest, we're going to pass you by. You may have great grades, 4.0, 3.8, 38 MCATs, whatever, but we're going to pass you by just for that one issue. And so it's easier to go ahead and list it. If you think it's fuzzy, list it anyway, and you can always explain after the fact. And we ask specifically on our secondary material to please elaborate on your any misdemeanors, any felonies, any institutional actions, and so we get that out in the open up front, and so that it doesn't become an issue. All of our students also have to take a medical physical through the Department of Defense, and so all your things that you are writing about in your application that you may have medical issues and stuff, that's how a lot of that is picked up, but you don't list it on your physical. Okay, and so there's that discrepancy. And so if when you go for the medical physical, anything, if it's ever happened, needs to be listed and checked off as yes or no. And it goes through a process. If there is a disqualification just based on something that happened as a childhood, there's a waiver process, and they do approve waivers for a number of different conditions. And so don't think you're counted out just because you had something that happened to you in the past. We've accepted people, and they've been able to get a waiver for loss of one kidney, or only having one kidney. So it even goes that far. So you don't have to worry about those different things. Other things on the criminal background check are any felonies or any DUIs or alcohol-related events or marijuana-type events and those types of things if you're using any types of drugs. What they do, one incident, you may get a buy. Multiple incidents and it's showing a pattern, that becomes a problem, and you may not be able to be eligible for a security clearance. One of the key things is that we offer our acceptances are based on our academics and the student's academic potential to go to be a physician. The admissions process is totally separate from the commissioning process, and you have to meet both parts of it in order to come into our school. And so the commissioning part includes the medical physical and the security clearance, being able to be eligible for security clearance. So if you'll get a conditional acceptance initially, and no one gets an unconditional acceptance right away, and that will be followed by signing an acceptance for the seat in the class, and then if you meet the security clearance and the medical physical qualifications, then you'll be given an unconditional acceptance. And so if you need to have a waiver, and that's why it's very important to apply early, because if you have to have a waiver, those waiver process can take up to 3 months to get that waiver. And as long as you don't have that unconditional acceptance, you don't have a full seat in the class. Very important, in May, everyone should put their transcripts in if you're going to be applying for that year's application process. Even if you have not completed your coursework for that spring semester, what it does in June, when you do submit that application, your transcripts are already there. You're going to list on your application that these are classes that are in progress. That transcript, the final transcript, will catch up with the school. That final grades will catch up, and you don't have to worry about them not having that information, as long as you list the coursework that you're currently taking. So you submit your transcripts in May when they open up the AMCAS portal, and then you submit your application the first week of June. That puts you early, and AMCAS will verify your application. Sometimes it takes 30 to 45 days to verify. The schools will know that you've applied to that school, but they may send you secondary materials, they may not. We send secondaries out to everybody. We don't charge a fee for the return, so it's a freebie. And while that secondary is being processed, and while you're sending in all your letters of recommendations, you're taking your MCAT, and that's why I said you do not have to have an MCAT posted on that exam, on that application when you submit it. That MCAT will catch up with the school as well. And so you don't have to wait for your scores to submit your application. A lot of schools will wait, a lot of students will wait, and they'll get the scores back at the beginning of August, and then they submit the application. Now you got to wait 45 days to get that verification before the school gets your application. So now you're really late, and you're in the late pool for interviews. This way, you submit your application, your MCATs catch up with you the first week of August, you're in the pool to go for interview review right now. And you get an interview early in September, October, and you're ahead of the game, okay? And so those are some of the things that are key to, as you go through the application process and bringing that, all of your background out. When you're writing your personal statement, you want to tell a story about how you got there. And a lot of people will use cliches and other things that other people have written about. You need to leave those out, because not every reader will understand where you're coming from in that, okay? It needs to be something from your heart as you're writing a personal statement. And I tell you my background because it allowed me to be able to talk about military medicine and how I came to learn about the Navy and the service, and about where my goals were for future medicine. And with that, I want to open it up a little bit to questions so we can answer some of the questions either here or online.
Dr. Calloway, one question has come in over the Twitter feed, pretty specific, related to the background check.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, if there was an arrest but no conviction, is there a need to disclose that?
Yes.
There is.
Because it will show up on the security clearance information. And that's something that, it's a situation that happened, and it's on your record. And every arrest is posted somewhere, and so you do need to disclose it. And non-disclosure can be a reason for, if you have a seat in the class unconditional and we find out about it after the fact, we can rescind your acceptance, and we have in the past. Yes?
You said that you shouldn't talk about your medical history in your personal statement, I
Mm-hmm.
think. So why is that?
The question was, I said that you shouldn't talk about your medical history in your personal statement because, and you want to know why is that? And I feel that your personal medical history is part of your private life. It's part of your personal, it's medical information that you don't know who's reading it on the backside. And sometimes having your medical information out there, people may look at that condition and say, oh, well, she may have problems, or she may have, some people talk about how they got depressed or something, and, oh, she may be a problem in school because she may get depressed because of overwhelming work or something in that respect. People interpret your medical history differently from, you may feel that it's okay, but they may interpret it differently.
Along the same lines, I think probably you're going to have the same answer, but I'm dyslexic and I probably shouldn't disclose that either, should I?
Not on the, she has a condition that she mentioned here in the audience, and she wanted to know if she should disclose it. And on your personal statement, I would not disclose it, but on the medical physical, you will need to disclose it. Okay, so as you're writing your personal statement is where I'm saying that people use situations, how they came into learning about medical and being exposed to medicine by a condition that they may have had, maybe a sports injury or something in that respect. But those are, I think, private issues, and if there's a medical physical that's required, those are required disclosures, but just putting it out there in your personal statement and not knowing who the reader is going to be. The medical history for a medical medical physical, the physicians that are taking care of you are the ones that you're going to be disclosing to, and they're bound by HIPAA not to disclose it anywhere farther. But the application isn't. Once you put it out there, it's out there for everyone to see. Yes.
What about auto accidents or speeding, things like that? That would not come under criminal.
The question was about auto accidents and speeding tickets, and which are not criminal incidents, and those incidents would, unless there was marked as a misdemeanor, you got for speeding over a certain speed limit, those are required to be listed on the AMCAS application and an explanation, or if it was a felony, it is required. Just regular speeding tickets for the security clearance, they are required to be listed. And what the adjudication was behind it. If there was a fine, if you went to school, if it was what fine you paid.
Do medical schools tend to make a distinction between negative occurrences in a person's past that may have, you could perhaps chalk it up to youthful indiscretion, versus something that was violent in nature, or the harm was caused? Is there nuance applied to the evaluation of these instances of a person's past that a person would not be particularly proud of?
Yes, our medical school looks at situations in that respect as well, and a lot of medical schools do. We know that there's a transition period between college and high school. As you make that transition, and you're sometimes exposed to a school where you came from a rural town and you didn't have all of these activities available to you, and now all of a sudden you're out there and you're running wild about it, and you do things that you normally may not be proud of. And so as you mature, and now those things are behind you, and you see this track record of maturity, and you see where you've gone and eliminated all of those indiscretions from your background. Our school looks at that, and we see a lot of that in our enlisted folks. We see a lot of them have gone to undergraduate school, right out of high school, failed out because they partied all the time and drank beer, or had incidents in school, underage drinking and those types of things. And when they dropped out of school, the parents looked at them and said, well, you're not coming back home, So they joined the service, and they joined as an enlisted member in whatever service they joined. They went, and as they were in the service, they corrected those behaviors, and now they're increased in their enlisted ranks, gone back to school, and did it right the second time. And we look at that pattern of how they've matured. They've managed their time a lot better, because they were able to get better grades while they're doing it the second time. They got the degree on their own without, anyone helping them support them. And so when they are ready to apply for medical school at this point, they may have initially that GPA that may be in the 1.9, 2.2, 2.3 range. And now the last 2 years of their or they may have done it in 3 years, depending on how they've done it. Their GPA is 3.5 or above, and they have a comparable MCAT of 30 or above to match it, and no subsections less than 8. Those applicants are very much looked at as viable and very respected applicants because now they have that maturity level attached to them. They can actually help those students that are in the class that may be still going with that transition change because they're still young and they're going on to medical school and they haven't been able to really put together how they're going to manage the overwhelming amount of reading, the overwhelming amount of work that they're going to get in medical school. And so we like to have those students in the classroom. And they can tell about their experiences and how they did it wrong the first time. Their overall GPA may not be in the sciences above a 2.88, but their last 2 years may have been a 3.5, 3.6. And so that mark does not, because mathematically they can't overcome that low GPA if they've done it for 2 years in the sciences. But that mark does not hinder them from going on to medical school. And we do take that in consideration as we're evaluating students.
It's interesting that we've immediately focused on all the bad things that we do in our lives.
Oh, yes.
But there's a lot of good that we do as well.
Mhm.
And I want to go back to an earlier point that you made because you're not the first person who's made it over the course of the conference, and that's a caution against the overuse of first person singular, the
Yes.
I.
Yes.
So when writing a personal statement,
Mhm.
how do you talk about yourself without constantly using the word I?
Well, you talk about what I did when I wrote my personal statement is, you start about talking about your family and you talk about the experiences that you have had and the people that you've worked with. And when I've worked in the hospital, you can actually relate to how you cared for a patient and how that patient's response to you was. And how you were able to maybe even console a patient that may have been hurting or a family member that may have been hurting because someone may have been dying in the family or someone with cancer or and some of those disease areas and stuff. When you do sit down to write your personal statement and after you've written it, make sure you have someone that is able to read it and critique it for what the content is. And not just one person, okay? You have a family member that will critique it because they know you best. Then you have your faculty members or a colleague, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or whoever it is. And make sure that as you're going through it, you're not only critiquing it for the content, but also for grammar and spelling, language, all the context and stuff. When you put it into the AMCAS application pool, you need to re-look at it again, print it out and have it critiqued again. Because sometimes what ends up happening when you put it in from different computers, different fonts and stuff, some of your periods and question marks will turn into slashes and X's and dollar signs, and it doesn't translate directly as you would on the computer. And so when you submit that and you haven't re-looked at it because you just cut and pasted it, it comes through, and the application folks that are looking at it, they look at it and say, oh, this guy had poor attention to detail, didn't look at his application, he submitted this with all of these errors in his context of his application. So make sure that you have printed it out and looked at it that last chance before you submit it on the application. Students that want to have their application reviewed before they send it in or just want some comments of how to start an essay, I work with a lot of students, and if you want to email me, and I travel a lot, so it may be a couple of days that I get back to you, but I'll be happy to look at applications in that respect as well, looking at personal statements and helping you develop and critique it.
What would you say were the best qualities on your personal statement and application, and the flaws that you?
The best qualities that I had was that I had a lot of clinical experience working with physicians, and so I could talk about the experiences there and how I learned to actually become a leader in the area that I was working in. And the faculty members that were working with me were teaching me a lot about medicine, and they knew I was interested in going to medical school, so I had all the support in that respect, and so that was part of some of the things that I wrote about in my essay. Yes.
You mentioned that you were doing a post-bac when you were applying to medical school,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided to take time off between undergrad and med school, and will be doing a master's while applying. Do you guys hesitate in accepting students that aren't done with their degree by the time you interview them or get their application?
So the question is, someone that's taken off time in between and they haven't completed their degree before going on to medical school, do we look at them as full potential applicants? And we do. Our requirement is that you complete your degree by June 1st of the matriculation year. And so you may not even have completed all the prerequisites until your spring semester, and as long as we have the final transcript of what those grades are, and they're C or better, your seat is safe if you're offered an acceptance. In the back?
Yes, so for some applicants, family becomes a really big part of their history and background.
Mm-hmm.
And if that takes up, say, a quarter of the personal statement, reflecting how important that is to them, is that looked upon kind of negatively as opposed to talking more about, a number of more different experiences?
No, the question was, family takes up a lot of, sometimes are important to a lot of the applicants, and when they talk about it in their personal statement, it may take up a quarter of the page. And does that take away from the applicant being able to talk about themselves? And the question is no. Talking about your family is, if that's a part of you, and they're going to be that support system for you to be able to be successful in medical school, then that is your pathway. And as such, you should elaborate on it and continue to do so. One of the things that we have is that our students are allowed to have their parents come and listen to the briefings on interview day. And we have a number of students come with their family members, and they come to our interview briefings and stuff. And so they want to learn more about military medicine just as much as the student is learning as they come for the interview. And we welcome that on a daily basis. We also have a second look weekend where we invite not only the family members but the applicants that have been accepted or on the wait list. We invite them back to come back and see on a second look, to look at the hospital, to look at the different things that they didn't see when they were there on their first trip, and to bring their family members to see where they're going to maybe living for the next 4 years.
Dr. Calloway, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you clarify what's required from a general criminal background check that a typical med school would require versus the kinds of things that a specialized background check like a security clearance check would require?
So for the criminal background check, the things that are required are any felonies, any misdemeanors, and any use of any institutional actions are pretty much required on the criminal background check. And what are some of the other things that they require? Anything that happens after the age of 18 is what's required on the criminal background check. They will ask about different incidents that you may have been arrested. Those sometimes can come up on that background check if the record is still at the on that level, at that level. If it just happened and it hasn't been cleared off of the record, so you do want to list those. They typically don't ask about speeding tickets and stuff. So those are some of the things, unless it was one of the speeding tickets that got you a misdemeanor charge attached to it, like over reckless driving type things. Okay. And a security clearance goes a little bit farther in that it asks a lot of questions about not only your criminal background behavior, but also things that may have happened in youth. They asked about drug history, drug use at any point in time, and they also asked about psychiatric health. and whether you've been admitted to mental institutions and other things in that respect.
Maybe we watch too many movies, but do they require a polygraph examination
No.
or anything like that?
No.
We're going to wrap in a minute,
Okay.
but let me just ask one last question. And this is one that students have been wondering about as they've been listening to all these great mentors and experts talk about experience and the value of experience and how it's so important to have experience and to appreciate your personal history. For the folks who are in the for the folks who are attending and listening, some of them are young and may not have acquired a lot of experiences or collected experiences at this point. And as they do you have any recommendations for how they can keep remembrances of those experiences so that when it comes time to write the personal statement, they can bring back some of the memories or the significance of an experience, even if it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
So I look at, when I talk to students about that issue, I tell them that when they're looking for an experience that they're going to use for their clinical exposure to medicine, they need to pick something that they're going to be able to express themselves and to have contact with patient, and to be able to talk to the facilitator that they're working with, and to be able to express to them what their needs are so that they can give them a valuable experience. You know, someone that comes in and they work in the emergency room and pretty much they're a runner to taking patients back and forth to x-ray or to the lab or in that respect on stretchers and stuff, those type of experiences can bring you a lot of satisfaction because you can talk to those patients as you go out, and those patients will come back and tell the doctor, oh, that student was very nice, or that student really made me feel at ease and was able to comfort me before I went into this little scary situation and stuff. So you need to be able to not only do the experience, but get something out of it and have some impact on the environment that you're working for, and then have the feedback come back to you so that you know how well you've done and if it has been something that someone will recognize and be able to write you a letter for.
Well, we've reached the end of our conversation with Captain Calloway, so let's thank her for her time and for her sharing of her story and inspiring us to share ours as well.
Thank you.